This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the new Prologue EV, there's a lot that could impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
Kroger Delivery has one mission: to deliver the freshest food right to your door. That's why our drivers are pros. Our trucks are refrigerated. And when it comes to low prices, we always deliver. With $20 off your first order of $75 or more, there's no better time to get in on the action. Mission accomplished. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler is on Underdog, so why not start playing on Underdog today? Download and play on the Underdog app, sign up with the code HTC, that's us, and receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash for our U.S. audience only. And that Travis Kelce free pick we keep talking about, it's still alive until kickoff on Thursday night. All you need is half a yard, Travis. Do it for the Chiefs. Do it for your brother. Do it for your pop star. Do it for the users of Underdog. All right, let's get to it.
The Heed the Call podcast is ready for some Sunday night football on Thursday night.
Listen, we get it. It's confusing, but it's not our company's branding, and I want to make that clear. Dan Hanzus here, Marc Sessler. Yes, the season is one day closer to beginning. Thursday night, Chiefs, Ravens, a great showdown, Marky Sessler, and I know you're pumped.
You know that it's beginning when our outlines for these shows, we like to prep, we like to put our personalities into what we do, different segments.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're spending half a day, grinding out last year's AFC title game between the Chiefs and the Ravens and digging, through data and notes to talk about an actual game, the script has flipped a little bit, Dan. We are right back in the thick of it.
We absolutely are, and that will be the first thing we talk about after news. Will be a preview, our first game preview of a new season, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit. Also, coming up a little bit later, and the guest list for the week one, ahead of week one, is killer. Of course, we had Damashek on Monday, and that was a great old time. Coming up a little bit later, Bill Barnwell of ESPN, one of our faves, who is going to help us get a little deeper into some storylines that have not been played out to death before the beginning of the regular season. So all that coming up. But like I said, let's start with just taking care of a little bit of housekeeping and the news.
Welcome to Applebee's. Can I interest you in America's favorite boneless wings for just 50 cents each?
I'll have the 50-cent bone.
Cover your mouth. They could steal your order.
That's where we're at now with Dan Campbell, Sessdoc. I think he's entered that rarefied territory where he's a darling of the industry, the way Rex Ryan was once upon a time, and now it's his time to shine. Now all the Lions have to do is actually win a goddamn thing.
Yeah, it's back in the day when Ron Meyer was running the Indianapolis Colts. It wasn't like you also needed to be like a thespian doing car commercials and Applebee's spots with genuine acting talent, because we've seen Andy Reid take his turn at that, did pretty well. But Dan Campbell, he's a natural. I thought that it's like he's a bit of a Stanislavskian type actor right there. Went right into the role, very deep.
It's such a. It's such a different world now than it used to be, because in the old days, you didn't have to do anything as a head coach other than just know ball and connect with players and win games. I don't know why an image of Wayne Fonts is just beaming into my brain, another former Lions coach. But now you have to be the CEO. You kind of got to be good looking now in a weird way, and you have to be able to present yourself in a way that goes just beyond the X's and O's, and Dan Campbell has done that. One other thing before we get to the news, I want to just set the table a little bit for the week here. We have, obviously, a new show today. We had the Damashek mailbag episode yesterday and our NFL season predictions. Amazingly, out of this show, the Jets, Browns, and Titans all cracking the postseason in various predictions. We have the Thursday preview show, big deal Thursday preview show with Jordan Rodriguez and Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic. Every week, we're going to be doing a TNF recap. It's SNF via TNF, or is it TNF via SNF recap with a special guest of Chiefs Ravens. And then Friday night, I don't know why, there's a game in Brazil. No one knows. I think it has something to do with money. But the Eagles and the Packers play on Friday night. We'll do a recap that night. So you're not going anywhere, Sessler. You're not doing any of your, Bob Seger, Hollywood Nights, routine, because we're talking ball. Because then 2 days after that, it's the flagship show in the return with Connor Orr. So I hope you enjoyed your flights of fancy up and down Cielo Drive.
No, I mean, this is a rather important venture for us. I wasn't planning to hatch like a new 4 or 5 days of, waltzing around town. That period is over. And I think in past years that would have agitated me to some degree, because I also drive to an office and sit in a cubicle. And now we are completely free. We're running our own show, and it feels different. It feels better. I am not annoyed on any level. I'm excited. This is a different type of season for us.
I love to hear that. I need to hear it, and now I've heard it, and now we can move on with the show. Not that was taking the temperature there. I am
experiencing enjoyment.
There we go. I mean, that is a great way to cap what you just said. All the things you said previously, and then what you just said just there, Mark, was a great way to put a finish on it there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, let's get into the news. The big story that everyone woke up to on Tuesday, a couple days ago, we learned that Brandon Ayuk and the Niners had ended their contentious little summer. And now, on Tuesday, it was Trent Williams' turn for his holdout to come to an end, the future Hall of Fame left tackle and really anchor of so much of what the 49ers do. They are, according to Adam Schefter, as of this taping, they are finalizing a new deal. According to his agency, Trent Williams is posting on social media, and he's excited. They're going to get suited up and return to the fray, and all this points to Mark, the 11-time Pro Bowler, being on the field on Monday night when the Niners begin their defense of the NFC title against the New York Jets. So, yes, Ayuk back in the fold. You have now Trent Williams back in the fold. You have Christian McCaffrey returning to practice. He missed much of training camp with a calf issue. So the Niners are becoming whole right just in time.
Just in time. It's hard to gauge how all this was going to get done, but I always felt that the Trent Williams piece was simply just more critical than Ayuk. I mean, someone could argue differently, but this was the sixth worst pass blocking line in the year ago. But you've got the greatest left tackle in football somehow masking a lot of that, and also Shanahan's system. But it's pretty incredible when you start to look at how much he means to the team. And that's even beyond the fact that I think he is the guy in the locker room that everyone looks to. There was the video out there a week ago that showed when, I think it was against the Browns that they were kind of jawing with the Niners, and Trent Williams comes out of nowhere, 20 yards up the field, and just blows up 5 Browns before the game. And it's that's who Trent Williams is. And when they ran to his side, 6+ yards per carry, it is 1.5 yards less anywhere else along that line, because that's not a star-studded line. If you look at what Christian McCaffrey's numbers were with or without Trent Williams during his run there, it's pretty insane. They're 4-10 without him. When he wasn't in the lineup last year, they started to sink. So he is the piece. And you kind of just trust that this guy is in his 15th season. 36, he kind of belies his age, that he's going to step in and be all right. I don't mind that there's an extra day between Sunday and Monday and even into the night for him to kind of just get acclimated. But as long as he's taking care of his body, and I trust he has, the Niners, but it started to feel like all of this could have started to take a toll, because it's been about dramatic as a training camp as you can imagine. But this is what they do. They get it fixed in the 11th hour, and suddenly the Jets have to deal with 2 players in another world they wouldn't have had to.
Yeah, so obviously if you're the Jets, you were hoping this drama would play out a little bit longer, but it's not. My one feeling is, and yeah, Trent Williams is an old man by NFL terms, and I was just thinking about this, and it's kind of the nature of the beast with the NFL, but I'll use baseball as a comparison point. When a player, whether it's a long holdout or their free agency extends longer than expected, or they're coming off an injury, the way that sport works is even once you get healthy, there's a ramp-up period. You might go on a minor league rehab assignment. You might have to essentially start over a spring training regimen to get you to get back on the field. The NFL, it's like, okay, you're back. All right, Trent, go out there and play 60 snaps on Monday night. And Christian McCaffrey, okay, we know you have a calf injury and you're a running back, but you've been working off on the side. So, what are they going to give McCaffrey, 30 carries and touches on Monday night? It wouldn't surprise me. It's just the nature of the beast in the NFL. And I would just say, as a Niners fan, you're kind of holding your breath that some of these issues that you now believe that you're over don't have any type of shadow. That would be the last concern. But I mean, ultimately, that's a minor quibble compared to where we were a few weeks ago when McCaffrey's status was unclear and Ayuk and Trent Williams were super unhappy. Things are where they need to be for the Niners right now. Now, one other Niners note, and this was a scary story that we learned over the weekend. Ricky Pearsall, their wide receiver who they took at the end of the first round, was involved with a violent incident in San Francisco where he was shot by a 17-year-old male who was attempting to rob him. And Mark, he was shot in the chest, and it's kind of a miracle because he shot through the chest. The wound, exit wound, is through his back. Somehow misses all vital organs. He's got his lungs and his heart and all sorts of stuff in there. Missed those, so he's out of the hospital. In fact, he was back with the Niners on Tuesday, so kind of a miracle, a scary situation. He's already now been ruled out the first 4 weeks of the season, but considering the circumstances here, it could not have been a better ending to what was, a tragic incident potentially.
I mean, it was pretty jarring to watch the video of him that they captured as he was able to walk away from the incident. But I mean, he looked obviously
crazy,
totally shaken, totally physically shaken up. It's like, an inch to the right or left or something, and the story is completely different. So the idea that he's going to get to even play football again this season, that's crazy, and they need him. I think it's the one thing, this one system where you can trust that like younger receivers can come in and thrive early. But all that kind of, it's like with all these sports stories where it just takes on generally a life of its own. It's about life. Like, just hope that he can heal quickly, and also that it wasn't like totally traumatizing because, he's moved from another place to San Francisco, and you could live in San Francisco for 10 years and nothing would happen to you, but you've got a 17-year-old hitting you up with a gun. I mean, shaky. So I'm glad he's right.
I mean, this is a separate story, but we learned this week that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the Chiefs running back, he's been put on the NFI list dealing with a form of PTSD that's connected to his own, as we understand, a violent incident that he was involved with, not directly. It wasn't him perpetrating the violence, but something he witnessed that has had long standing issues for him personally. So you're right. Like that, this isn't something that's like, oh, the bullet missed my heart, so now I'm good. So you just hope for the best. And just in terms of his background, he's really hasn't played that much throughout the summer, been dealing with a couple of different injuries. So you would think now this incident, it's kind of a total restart, and we'll see if he can make something out of his rookie year. But just the fact that he is alive matters more than anything. So that is that situation. Anything else that we need to hit here? No, I think that's good. I think we should transition. I think we should get into it. That's what's happening in the news. And Mark, I think a good way to get into this Thursday night game, and it's again, I'll say this, Marky, I'll say this, that I am always a little bit, although everyone's excited for football to start, and what a better way to start a football season than a rematch of the AFC Championship game. It always gives me a little bit of pause that you're getting these teams before they've figured out who they are and their identity, and it's such a huge game because the Ravens and Chiefs, if you want to pick who are the two teams in the AFC that I feel most comfortable, or even the desert feels most comfortable saying, oh, they're going to win 12 or 13 games. It's these two teams probably. And then you factor in what's the first tiebreaker in the case of teams finishing with the same record in the regular season. It's head-to-head matchup. So this is a massive kickoff at a time mark where both the Ravens and the Chiefs are, whether it's injuries or new players and new positions, or just the general butterflies that come with NFL season now begins with barely anybody of consequence getting much preseason playing time in games. It's going to be a hugely important game, but also one that there's going to be significant rust, and that's just part of these Thursday night openers and, in general, the opening of the season with these primetime games, because the league's always going to want to put these teams, high-profile teams, in these spots, and the games count just as much now as they will in early January.
And it takes on a different life than a year ago when the Chiefs were almost, to some degree, drowned out by the lovable nature of the Lions and the fact that the Lions had been picked for the kickoff game, and the fact that what happened in that game, which was different because it's an NFC team. But this really is the kind of game you could look back on months from now and say, whoever takes it could have the end up with home field advantage, depending on how the record ends. And that AFC title game, which we've all kind of taken a look at recently, which was a weird game for the Ravens in so many ways, leaves a lot of questions for them to answer right away. Forget all this business about revenge game. I think it's just kind of like a look in the mirror type game, because Todd Monken, who did a nice job with this offense and had an MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson, they just lost themselves in that game entirely. You had 6 running back rushes the entire time. They lost their identity. To me, you're looking at a team with Todd Monken. It's like answers right there. How do you come out and reset what this offense is against a very good defense? But it's also a Ravens team where you look at that game and you can say, well, there's a lot of newness here, because Zach Orr is your new defensive coordinator. He's replaced Mike McDonald, who did an incredible job last year and really transformed that defense and maximized them. This is a 32-year-old defensive coordinator who's been with the Ravens for, I think, 7 of the last 8 years, but 4 of he was a player. I mean, I remember when Connor Orr and I were talking about the fact that there was a Ravens player with the last name as his. He didn't last long as a player. He's now a coach, but he lost a lot of guys on
the
defense.
Ravens DC isn't Connor?
It's not.
Okay,
it's not related to Connor.
Research.
Not related to Connor.
Yeah,
but
I thought we had a real coup d'etat there.
No, that would have been, also because he just appeared on our show a week ago. To shift into that job would have been interesting. I mean, it's just, there's change all over the place, because for me, the key is if you go back to that title game, Steve Spagnuolo rushed Lamar Jackson a ton. It was the second most rush rate for that Chiefs defense of any game all year. And they've, since that Ravens line has lost 3 starters. And you've got Andrew Voorhees, who last year was a highly picked rookie, did not play at all. He's at left guard. And Roger Rosengarten, who's a second rounder from this year, at right tackle. And that is like, there's a lot of TBD there. And so I wonder if
3 starters, 3 new starters.
That's the kind of thing where we can say to ourselves, like, the Ravens are so consistent. They've got a new coordinator. They've got an entirely new offensive line from some angle. They've lost a bunch of guys all over the place. I know you're not a big Jadeveon Clowney guy, but they needed him last year. He had one of his best seasons.
How could you not be? He was great.
Exactly.
He was great last year. Just to focus it in a little bit here, let's start with the offense. So, you're right. What Monken did taking over for Greg Roman was remarkable when you look back on it. And if you look, they had... This is a great stat from the Football Almanac, Aaron Schatz's Football Almanac. The Ravens offense generated 132 explosive plays in 2023. That was 7th in the NFL. They also, just in a way they were able to open up the field for Lamar Jackson was something that in Roman's offense, things had gone stale, and it just really needed to be updated. And they were able to do that and create those explosive plays, despite, obviously, Mark Andrews missing a large chunk of the season, and despite there being a lack of consistency in the running game behind Lamar Jackson, and questions at wide receiver as they were trying to get Odell Beckham going throughout the season and get, Zay Flowers, who really hit the ground running, but having a rookie wide receiver in the mix and all the challenges that come with that. The fact that it all kind of went away in that AFC title game, it has to be I know they don't talk revenge game. I think what a cliche. Lamar said every game is a revenge game. Whatever, bro. You had the best, one of the best offense since your 2019 first MVP season. You had the best defense in the league by a large measure, and a Chiefs team that was clearly not the same team last year, and you couldn't get it done. And the fact that you look at that, Mark, that AFC title game. I mean, what a sin. You had Lamar throwing 37 passes in that game, and you had Lamar leading the team in rushes with 8. Gus Edwards, Zay Flowers, and Justice Hill, 3, 2, and 3 carries in that game. 16 carries. What a sin. So as much credit as Monken deserves, Harbaugh and Monken went off the script, and they got killed for it in the AFC title game. Enter Derrick Henry, and I think that's a big part of this now. So you have the offensive line questions, which are fair, but you have Lamar Jackson, who's said earlier in camp that he's shed some weight and he's looking to be more explosive. If that's true, if that's not just training camp talk, and he actually is, because you notice that even in winning the MVP, he wasn't as fast and devastating a runner last season. And Derrick Henry still has gas in the tank. This team is going to be a mess to deal with for opposing defensive coordinators if that offensive line does its job.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you are facing a Chiefs defense that allowed the fewest 20-plus yard plays around. That's something I can trust to stick around more than just some of the other changes. They also allow the 10th highest explosive run rate. So I think if you're the Ravens and you want to make a statement out of the gate, and you want to, I think Derrick Henry, you're not going to use him heavily every game if you can help it. But this is a game where I'd like to see Derrick Henry come in and set the tone early, along with Lamar, and just sort of say what was missing in that last title game. And that's it. Some of this is not to go like talking head, but some of it is like it does lead to like deeper questions about Lamar Jackson in the most critical spots. He's 1-4 against the Chiefs. So are the Ravens with him in there. So it's a team thing. But you're facing an Andy Reid team that is 9-2 in openers, and the loss last year was unusual for them. They're going to be totally well prepared. And if we flip it to the Kansas City offense, they've gotten faster. I think Xavier Woods changes what you can do. They really obviously struggled with long, mundane, grinded out drives last year. And the way they used Xavier in the preseason, but he was on the field for about 90% of the dropbacks that Mahomes was there for. So they've got a lot. As much as you can get work together, they've tried. And I got to imagine if you're Andy Reid, if you're all of them, you're drawing up stuff on napkins with a bunch of Chinese food boxes around you. It's got to involve this new wide receiver and what you couldn't do a year ago, correct?
Yeah, I think if you look at the Chiefs getting beat, and what a tough start to for Tugboat to I remember locks last season. I opened the season by locking up the Chiefs, and they lose by 1 point, and they lost that game because of 2 players, one who was there and one who wasn't. Chris Jones, the best player on the other side of the ball for the Chiefs on defense, he had a long holdout, so he missed week 1. And then you had Kadarius Toney, who they were trying to cosplay him as potentially their number 1 wide receiver, and he immediately blew up with a catastrophic week 1 that featured multiple drops that cost them the game straight up. So he's out of town. He was cut last week. Chris Jones is back. Xavier Worthy's in the building. We don't have Hollywood Brown yet. He's coming back from that injury, but Rashee Rice now year 2. He's not going to be suspended, at least for the start of the year. Isaiah Pacheco's back, and I think Gravedigger, I'm curious what you see. Obviously, Travis Kelce is back, another year older, sure, but also Kelce and Mahomes have chemistry that we've never seen between QB and tight end. I expect this offense to be a lot better. I expect the Ravens defense to come down from their nearly historic rates last year. If you pop the hood on their metrics, you're comparing them favorably to the 85 Bears and the 2000 Ravens and the 91 Redskins, Mark, who we were talking about recently, and the 07 Pats. So if that will be the thing I'm kind of watching maybe the most. Do the Chiefs look better and more explosive? Are the Ravens not quite where they were defensively last year? Because that could decide the game.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how long this Ravens team takes to gel on both sides of the ball, because you mentioned all the turnover on defense. They still have some, really great players on that side of the ball, and Kyle Hamilton, Justin Madubuike, who's now going by Nandi Madubuike.
Yeah, what do you think about that, by the way? Just a quick aside. So he turns away from Justin Nation in a big spot for whatever reasons, his personal reasons, but to discard your name, it had to at least ring an alarm bell for you.
It's got to raise
It's
questions.
tough, but I respect him because he's going back to with the name that his parents gave him and what they call him, and I like that he's bringing representation to that. I will say name changes in the NFL for players haven't always worked out well. Like they sometimes fade into obscurity. You look at Shaquille Leonard, who was Darius Leonard, and then injuries took their toll. You look at Robbie Anderson, who then became Robbie Anderson, who then became Robbie Chosen. It's like, I don't know if that's working out for him. So
can you change your name? Can you be Nnamdi Graver? That would be cool.
It would be cool, but I think that might be cultural appropriation or something else that might get me canceled.
That could get you in hot water, and we would wash our hands of you immediately. All right, go on with your point.
My point being, there's still great players on this defense, but there are also guys who are going to step into roles that they either filled in last year in spot starts when people were injured, or guys that had somewhat breakout campaigns like Brandon Stevens at cornerback that's going to be replacing Ronald Darby. But with Zach Orr taking over and losing not just their defensive coordinator, but a bunch of defensive assistants who went on to be defensive coordinators elsewhere, it may not, but it might take them a few weeks to really figure it out and come together. So this is definitely a tough spot. Like if you're the Ravens, you'd probably rather play one of the best teams in the league, not the first game with your new defensive staff. And then same thing for the Ravens on the offensive side of the ball with, keep talking about 3 new offensive line starters. Mark, just a minor correction for you. You said Andrew Voorhees was a high drafted player last year. He was actually a 7th rounder last year, and he missed the whole season with injury.
Break for the old Cess dog.
It's fine. I just wanted to make sure that our audience knows that Mark knew that. He just said it wrong. It was a misspeak. But anyway,
correct. I guess.
You got all these new.
Mark already struggles to sleep. He's going to be staring at the ceiling, going full Dracula, thinking about the 7th round designation.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, what was I saying? The offensive line could take a little bit of time to gel. You got a rookie second-round pick in Roger Rosengarten who's expected to step in at right tackle. However, the craziest part about this offensive line, to me, is that John Harbaugh is not announcing who the starters are going to be. He said, what would be the point? We're just going to go play the game. So they lost both their starting guards in free agency. They traded their starting right tackle. Might have a rookie starting there. We don't know. But the thing about this Ravens offensive line, the last 2 years, they ranked 1st and 2nd in rush yards before contact per carry. Derrick Henry ranked 8th last year and 4th the year before that in rush yards after contact per carry. And the Titans, where Derrick Henry was running, obviously, they ranked 30th in the league both of the last 2 years in yards before contact for carry. So if this offensive line can play at a similar level they've played the last couple of years, especially when it comes to run blocking, Derrick Henry could be, an absolute game changer. We talk about him like he's sort of washed in the later stage of his career, and he's definitely not the same guy he was when he ran for a 99-yard touchdown and threw Jacksonville defenders out of the way like they were sacks of flour. But he still was up there near top of the league in yards after contact per carry last year. So if they can create some space for him, I think this running game could be really dangerous. But it all hinges on how long is this offensive line going to take to gel? Can they gel out of the gate, or is this like a week 5 it comes together thing?
Well, there's another X factor here, by the way. Their offensive line coach, beloved inside the building, passed away a couple years ago, and so a couple weeks ago, Joe D'Alessandro was absolutely critical to that line, and they brought in George Warhop, who is a veteran coach, but he was from outside the org. That is a lot of transition, and I think that the players working with a certain coach for years, or in this case for rookies during the summer. That's a human thing too, and it's just you're asking this unit to do a lot out of the gate. I like those Derrick Henry stats, and also you can focus on the fact that Derrick Henry, he played behind a pretty shattered Titans line the last couple of years. So this is a wait and see situation, but it is in the opening night in Kansas City with guys who have not been in this situation. It's kind of you can't really look back on the AFC title game on some level and say this is the same operation.
All right, let's pick this game. Why not?
Oof.
Gravy,
Do you think the Chiefs pregame banner ceremony will have any impact on the Ravens' mentality as they're sitting there on the sidelines watching them hang this banner and they're like, that should have been us? I agree.
Please.
It might.
If they need that, if you want to talk anything about the Ravens' mentality, I would say again, that team last year had a historically great defense, playing out of its mind for 3.5 months, killing everybody. Their losses were fluky. Their wins were dominant. Every contender they faced, dominant victories. Remember the Christmas night game? My goodness, what they did to the 49ers that night. They looked unstoppable. And I would say in terms of like battle damage and scarring, to not get over the hump when you had that defense and the MVP at quarterback, to not even get to the Super Bowl, you just wonder if, and now to lose the DC, to lose players, the climb, it's like how I feel about the Niners a little bit. That climb, you start to look out at the beginning of a new season and it just seems a little steeper every year because you've had so much disappointment. But all that stuff, I think we won't know. This team's going to be fine if they stay healthy. I think they're going to win 11 or 12 games. But, the pressure is building. It has to be. And if they're saying it's not, they're lying to us.
Context for that historic defense thing: first team in NFL history to lead the league in points allowed per game, total sacks, and total takeaways. That is incredible. I don't know.
And they had the MVP at quarterback, and they couldn't get out of the AFC when the Chiefs were, clearly the worst Chiefs team of this run, and they still couldn't get over the hump. That has to sit with you in a way that's either motivating or a little bit,
Yeah.
And they shut them out in the second half of that game.
Yeah,
what
and
more
still
can the
lost.
defense
Zay
do?
Flowers was an inch away from tying that game, but L'Jarius Sneed, who's not there anymore, knocked the ball out of the goal line. I do think that the Ravens, I think all the talk about motivation and mentality and stuff, maybe that lasts for one snap and then you're just playing football again. So I kind of hate all that talk anyway. I'm going to pick the Chiefs. I think if this, like I said, if this matchup was week 10, the Ravens would win because I think that defense and offensive line would have the time it needs to gel. But I am going to take the Chiefs. However, I don't think they cover 3 points. I think it's like a Patrick Mahomes game-winning 24-23 type of score for Kansas City.
All right, how about you, Marky?
Yeah, if you look at these Chiefs teams, they don't go in and beat teams 45-3. They tend to find a way to keep these games close. The way that they overcome really dramatic situations and their own, misfortunes, to me, though, emboldens who they are and what they are. And when that flag raises for them, it's we got through last season with our worst offense, with an offense that was, not able to function the way that we'd want. And I just feel like they're so elastic. They probably feel like they can win in any situation. You already have a quarterback that makes you feel that way. You got a coach that makes you feel that way. Then you always mention the defense after those things, but the defense got them out of so many jams last year. I think Spags is such a huge asset. This is a team that kept all their coaches. There's so much consistency. They added at wide receiver. I don't know how. I would be very surprised if this Ravens team that's in flux. You're right, Justin, that in week 1 there's just a lot to figure out. You're in Kansas City. This place is going to be going absolutely crazy. The Chiefs are extremely healthy. So are the Ravens. But the Chiefs don't have really anyone of note outside of Hollywood Brown not appearing in this game. And I feel like they win this 27-17.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I'm kind of in a similar boat as you. I like the Chiefs. I like the Chiefs to cover. I do think the Ravens defense deserves a lot of respect, but also there's a little bit of transition, and that might take time. I'm not going to be panicking for either of these teams if it doesn't go their way, again, owing to the fact that this matchup is just so early that these teams just – look at the Chiefs, an example. The Ravens, with their pieces on offense and the MVP, the Chiefs haven't even had their full 11 guys on defense practicing until this week. So there's certainly another end of this where the Ravens with Derrick Henry and Lamar – and Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, they go off. But I just don't see it. Not yet. Not in this setting. Not in Kansas City. Mark, how about this? 27-17. I'm with you.
Wow.
Chiefs win.
Okay.
So Ravens fans
Lock
who
bros.
think we hate you or whatever. Or
I'm with
team,
myself also.
I don't believe that. I think the Ravens are going to be fine. I picked them as a playoff team, but this is a very tough spot for them in a time of transition. Speaking
I picked.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Justin.
I just blew that for you. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to throw one last thing out there because I picked the
You
Chiefs
will take
in this
7
game.
lashings. And you have also lost your name, Justin. It's gone now. No, go ahead.
I I just wanted to state for the Ravens fans out there, we didn't get to my Super Bowl picks on the last show, but I picked the Ravens to beat the Lions in the Super Bowl. So I'm very high on this Ravens team. I think this week 1 is just a little road bump that they are going to overcome.
Oh, my goodness. I should take the lashing. I forgot to get Justin at the end of the show with his picks.
It's fine. I'll tweet him.
Damashek just slid in and took the Justin spot. The former Justin. No, okay. Justin's back. It's back. Even Steven. You blew my transition, but then I screwed it up on Monday.
It's all good.
All right. Transition. Let's take a break. And when we return, Bill Barnwell talking about the things that you're not talking about, but probably should be. Be right back.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler is on Underdog, so why not start playing on Underdog today? If you haven't seen the Week 1 promo calendar yet, you're going to be shocked at how much Underdog is giving away. 2 free picks, a no-sweat token, profit boost tokens, college football discounts, vulture protection, and a mystery promo, Dan.
Spicy.
So download and play on the Underdog app, sign up with the code HTC, and receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash for our U.S. audience only.
Welcome back. Our next guest is my favorite pro football writer. Why? He's a man who blends expert knowledge, historical perspective, subtle humor, pure passion. All of this done with just a hint of the roguish charm that only an alumni of Northeastern University in Boston can possess. It's Bill Barnwell.
I was waiting for like a little burn at the end of that, like my favorite football writer who went to Northeastern in 2001. But no, you gave me the whole thing. I'm honored. That's very flattering. I feel like I really need to deliver here on the show now.
I don't mean to ramp up the pressure, but yeah, now I have set the table and a bar that perhaps is impossible to reach.
I'm not a very tall person, so I will do my best jumping. Maybe I can get those cool shoes they had when we were kids that you could didn't have like a back half, and so you build up your calf. I think Danny Kelly, I believe.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like a 5'6" guy could like learn to dunk, basically.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. On the way, have to assume you'd tear your Achilles maybe a half dozen times.
Also, that's clearly Fugazi. I'm sure. Did that company get sued? I mean.
Can't imagine.
I mean, the product is gone. If you
buy something from, that feels like something where, you send them an email, you send them a letter, and you get a, no address found response. You are chasing that company around the country like they're Carmen Sandiego, is my knowledge.
Carmen Sandiego, which I once appeared in the studio audience.
Really?
Yes.
What continent was the final challenge?
Oh, shoot. Now you got me on that because this was 30 years ago, but you had to pass a test to be able to take the bus into Manhattan for the taping. I think it was Manhattan. And to be up close with, we're really dating ourselves here, but like Rockapella and and the woman who was the host of that show, I believe.
Yeah.
It is foggy, but great program. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Let's get on track.
Wonderful show.
I got Barnwell here. And you could watch Barnwell. He's all over ESPN, obviously, and then read him on ESPN.com. And I thought, Bill, to have you on the show, it would be a waste of our time, quite frankly, at this juncture, with the season right upon us, to talk about the same BS that everyone's talking about. Because at a certain point, before the games finally start, it feels like everything that has been said has already been said and then said again and again and again. So instead, we have Bill here to help give you more nuance. In fact, this is what you people don't realize is the segment, and I would like, Bill, for you to kick it off for us.
First off, I just want to say I love this premise. And you people don't realize I could live my life every day and have a half hour just where it's just around, just not football, just life. You people don't realize just around.
That's like that's like 40% of the dynamic with my wife is just us like being like, what you don't realize. And then if you get proven right, whether it's in life or in a football take, these are the ones that can carry us straight to March. I mean,
yes,
so here we are.
This is a real upside scenario here for us if we pull this off. Okay,
let's get into it.
I'm going to start with one I have been paying more and more attention to, and I think people are missing something here. Dan and Mark, I feel like there's something people are not paying appropriate attention to. Everybody is talking about a Chiefs three-peat. But what you people don't realize is that the Chiefs are positioned to have an absolutely legendary regular season this upcoming year. On the Mina and Dominique podcast that I did recently, my spiciest take was that the Chiefs would win 16 games this upcoming season, becoming the third team in NFL history behind the 1972 Dolphins and the 2007 Patriots. And what this really gets at, guys, is that I think people don't realize how unlucky the Chiefs were.
No, more condescending,
year.
Bill. What you people
just don't. You don't get it. You don't understand. You don't think about it. You're too distracted by shiny things. What you don't realize is that when you grind the tape, when you're out there in R, putting together the data, or Excel if you're me, because I'm not talented enough to know R. What happened here is the Chiefs were a remarkably unlucky team who also happened to win 11 games. And some of the stuff was apparent at the time, but maybe wasn't quite as clear when you look at the data. It became clearer, I should say, when you look at the data. I mean, everyone knows the Chiefs wide receivers were a disaster last year, but they had the worst drop rate of any group of wide receivers in any season over the last decade, and they have made major upgrades at receiver in Xavier Worthy, and when he gets back to play, Hollywood Brown. Mahomes was 28th in the NFL in QBR on deep passes last season. That is not going to happen again. I just don't think that's going to happen again, and that fundamentally opens up that offense in a way that they have not been able to do since Tyreek Hill left. They have found a running game since then. Mahomes has transformed himself into an incredible short passer. Now they have the ability to attack teams deep again. They were on top of that. Something we associate with bad football teams, a middling or mediocre turnover margin. That was the Chiefs last year. They had a minus 11 turnover margin. For the Chiefs, a team that they don't have problems with turnovers. And they had a really good defense. They should not have had a crazy bad turnover margin. They lost the turnover margin in 9 different games last year. That did not happen previously in the Mahomes and Andy Reid era. And when they win the turnover battle, or they just don't lose the turnover battle, they're 56-8 as a franchise since Mahomes took over as quarterback. That's like a 15-win pace for an entire season. I don't think they're going to lose the turnover battle as much as they did a year ago. And then the defense. We all saw it play well all year. And yes, they did lose L'Jarius Sneed, but this is the second youngest defense of any team in football last year on a snap-weighted basis. And without Sneed, pretty much everybody else is back. A lot of those players are entering their prime. They have a key player in the Chris Jones vein. Guys, I feel like, you can't project any team to win 16 games. You can't project any team to be that good and there's some element of luck going into that. But I don't believe we've had a team that is better positioned to have that kind of upside since the 2007 Patriots than the 2024 Chiefs. That's something that you people just don't realize.
I may not realize it, but you're helping me to realize it, I would say, because I feel like with Kansas City, it's just been such a rugged challenge the past 2 years. I can think back to 2 playoff runs ago when you have Patrick Mahomes on an ankle that would knock other quarterbacks out, and yet he is using his scrambling ability to win games in the clutch in a way that really sort of defies logic from a health body standpoint. And last year, it's like they learned to win in completely different ways, and you're kind of wondering, I always reference this team because it dazzled me when I was young, like the 89 Niners, a team that just learned how to kind of shape into who they were with a great quarterback, a great defense, a great cast around that quarterback, and an excellent coach, and they started just to pummel teams left and right. That has not been the Chiefs' experience. They've had to grind out wins. Last year, Patrick Mahomes, 15.5 passing points per game, the lowest of his career, and that had a lot to do with the environment around him. They overcame so much that it's like you are kind of waiting for them to just flex their muscles and say, hold on, here's us at the A-plus version, minus some of the misfortunes, whispering about Travis Kelce not being the same, not having enough weapons. Now we've added them, and it's like other teams, I think they break the spirit of other teams because they've found a way to beat teams at their lesser so often that if you start to get them at the high version, high motor aspect of this team, I'm with you. I think that is very achievable.
All right, let me try to poke some holes in this then, because how many teams have won 16 or more games? Well, certainly none since the schedule expanded. But these are the truly special teams. I mean, I guess the most recent, the Panthers, they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they went 15-1. Sure. Obviously, the Patriots, 18-1. That Redskins team that's come up recently on our show a lot, Mark, because we were just talking about how they had a historic defense the year they won. They went, I think they lost 2 games all year. This is once you get to this territory, you're a special team. Now, here are the holes I'll try to poke in it.
Please.
Xavier Worthy if that guy hits the ground running and Rashee Rice plays a full season with his legal issues, yes, their offense is going to explode. But neither of those are a given. Travis Kelce, I'm not going to hammer on the fact that he's a year older, but he is a year older. And I guess I'm curious where you come down on it, Bill, when you were watching him last year. He certainly didn't have the season production-wise in 23 that he did in 22, but he was also a big-time player in the playoffs. But still, age gets everyone. The only thing I'll point out on the defense, I guess, would be in the secondary. Trent McDuffie is somebody that they can count on. But they're even saying, the coaching staff, Reed is like, we're not really sure who the other guys are right now, but we're going to figure it out. So it's not like there's no question marks around this team. Which one of those bring you the most pause when you're like, shoot, I might not be right, and they're more like an 11 or 12 win team? Where are the holes here?
I would look at cornerback, post-L'Jarius Sneed. I think you brought that up. That's a legitimate concern. I think they're in good shape relatively. You have Trent McDuffie, who to me is a superstar. That's a good place to start with. They're going to be healthier at safety. They lost Brian Cook the second half of last year. He was a really good player for them, and they're going to be able to use him this year with, and have a deeper secondary to work with than they did towards the end of the season a year ago. It's a positive to me. And it's going to have to look different. There's going to be an adjustment period, but I think if the offense is just blitzing people, which I think they're capable of, it's not a concern. The other one I might bring up is left tackle, where you have a rookie in Kingsley Suamataia as the one weak spot on an otherwise excellent offensive line. They have said great things about him so far. Everyone seems to be thinking he's doing really well. I have no doubt Andy Reid's going to help him a bit during the season. But, I don't think you can pencil in Suamataia as an instant superstar left tackle the way they have for, good to great players elsewhere on their line. But, I think the interesting thing about this is, we don't always see this happening in events, right? I mean, go back to 2007. The Patriots, that team, we weren't talking about that team as like a 16-0 team before the year. I mean, Randy Moss had just been acquired from the Raiders for a mid-round pick. He was on a one-year deal, took a pay cut to go play for the Patriots. Wes Welker hadn't even been a regular starter his time with the Dolphins on a terrible football team. He had been like a slot receiver with middling numbers. They traded, a second-round pick and a seventh-rounder to acquire him instead of going through the RFA market. It's not like we were looking at those guys thinking, oh man, they're going to be, the most devastating offense in the history of football. Like once we saw them week one, it was, this is going to be terrifying. I think, there's no perfect team, right? Maybe you go back to, like Mark said, like the late 80s, early 90s. Maybe you have teams that were just so deep before the salary cap era that wasn't the case. But every team has flaws. And I think relatively, the Chiefs' flaws are mitigated by what they have around them. Left tackle's maybe a question, but the rest of the line is great. Cornerback posting might be an issue, but I think they have a great defensive coordinator who's going to cover for that. And they have a front four that I think is good and getting better each and every season. So, it's going to be a little different maybe, but I think, they have so many opportunities to cover for their weaknesses that on paper, they just look so good to me.
This feels like a good time for me to get that plug in, by the way, on the Underdog app, that the Travis Kelce free pick that we've been talking about, still live until kickoff. You just need half a yard. I mean, he might have 200.5 yards by the end of that game. We shall see. All right, Mark, give us something that, the regs, the basics, they're not seeing.
Well, this matters to me as much as anything that's happening on the field. And it's because it's the kind of thing that could impact our viewing of the sport if it goes well for decades. And I think it's going to go well. Coming off of a couple of years where I doubted that, I wondered if this was possible. I wondered if this person would even actually chase this profession. But I think that what people don't realize, and it's annoying me that they don't, that Tom Brady is going to step into this role and he is going to thrive, and it's going to begin this Sunday with the Browns versus the Cowboys. Now, he is facing some challenges because we know what's going on. This league doesn't want him to thrive. That's how I feel. And
our league,
they are tying him up with this Raiders minority ownership. Of course, the Chiefs don't want Tom Brady going into their complex and talking to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh don't want him doing that, and no one in the AFC does. But I think he could even overcome that situation until it gets ironed out. There was an incredible clip. I'll tell you, I never thought he was going to do this. I thought he was maybe going to never become an announcer. But there is growing proof to me.
And what did I say, Sess Dog? Sit tight, baby, because you know what? $375 million talks.
It does
and
talk.
Bullshit
it does
walks.
talk. But he also, when all this started, other things were happening in his life. I really think that Tom Brady is absolutely driven to do this well. There was a clip of him showing someone that for every single game he was ever in every season, he had these thick binders. And instead of the old investigator that has them in a garage, you got to roll up the garage to go show some true crime, some dusty file, he pours through them nonstop to remember what happened, what's happening now, what will happen. And I really believe that Tom Brady, even if he is prevented from some of these research aspects early on, is going to be able to translate his knowledge in a way. That's what stopped Johnny Unitas from being a good announcer. That did stop Joe Montana. Bill Walsh suddenly was pretty bland in the booth. So it does require Kevin Burkhardt to come in and help him a lot. And I don't like what happened to Greg Olsen. That part of it has always annoyed me. Greg Olsen is an absolute star, but that isn't entirely Tom Brady's fault. I'm just telling you what people do not realize. They think Tom Brady's the next guy that they can keep roasting off the summer roast, and he's going to fail. And I think a bunch of people want to see him be less than perfect. And we are kind of post Tony Romo shine on some level. We're ready for a new face. And I think people don't realize that Tom Brady is going to be one of the biggest conversation points come Monday morning.
I
love you, Tom.
I love Tom Brady.
Love you, bro.
I would be shocked. I think it is a huge, not just media story, but a big NFL storyline this week. I was going to talk about this, Mark, so we could kind of dovetail it. But his debut in Cleveland is going to be the most scrutinized telecast by an NFL announcer. If you're older, you maybe Dennis Miller when he was on Monday Night Football way back when, and this idea of Brady is such a towering figure in the culture and also such a big target that, yes, if he is bad at this, he is going to get buried in it. And Bill, I think the thing that kind of jumps out to me about it for a guy that's accomplished so much, that I'm kind of fascinated by the psychology of Brady, that he seems possessed with this desire to challenge himself and take big risks. I'm still trying to figure out why he did that roast at the Forum, for example, and this broadcasting gig to do this at the same time he's trying to take on this ownership. And then all the challenges that come with that and the restrictions that Mark's referring to. I feel like this man is an addict chasing another hit where he can go back and almost be like, I'm the 6th round underdog again. Get help, man.
I feel like he's bored, right? I mean, that's the best explanation for why he would do this. Or maybe when he signed his deal, he anticipated being bored after his professional career ended. I'm of two minds of this, guys. I mostly agree with Mark. I think Tom Brady is going to be prepared. I think he's going to be thoughtful. I think Tom Brady is going to be a little charming. Tom Brady has a little bit of charm to him when he wants to. My only concern, my only reservation is that Tom Brady, more than anybody, since over the last year, to me, has been the guy saying, the game is so much worse than it used to be. The players, they're not prepared as much. The game is sloppy. Remember Tom Brady's tweeting during Thursday night games when he wasn't playing? He did not love those. And that's very different. You're preparing for the game differently as a broadcaster as opposed to just watching it on your couch. That's my only reservation, is if Tom Brady comes into this practice and his logic is, I'm going to compare the game to what it was 20 years ago with, I'm going to say this, rose-colored glasses about what the game was actually like 20 years ago when, I'm sure Tom Brady's games look great because he's incredible. I guarantee you, those of us who had to watch, the Raiders every week for 20 years over that period, we didn't see great football. Like the Raiders 20 years ago were not as good as even a bad team now. I think that's going to come off very poorly. And so, to me, I think if it's just Tom Brady sticking to the game, sticking to what he sees, sticking to the actual performance of players, I think he's going to be great. I think the big picture stuff, the context, the stuff that other announcers I think do really well. I think Greg Olsen is a great example. Someone who, Greg Olsen he's very clearly analytically friendly. He's very clearly a fan of the modern game. He criticizes players when he needs to. He's not someone who passes judgment on stuff. He's not dismissive of what people are thinking. He just says, hey, I'm going to call the game. I'm going to let you make those decisions. And I think that's my concern is I want to see if Tom Brady lets fans make their own choices about the quality of the game they're seeing.
All right. We'll see what happens. Yes, Mr. Gravedigger.
Sorry to prolong this topic further, but any thoughts on the restrictions that Brady's under? Ability, you can't criticize officials. There's some other.
As I understand it, this is like a temporary holdup, and Fox isn't overly concerned with it. And if Fox isn't overly concerned with it, I'm not going to be at this time. But yeah, it does. It's quite a few restrictions that, again, given the responsibility that he has as the lead guy, he doesn't need another challenge in front of him. So we'll see what happens.
I was walking through the Fox studios one day this summer. I came from Fox before we all
Bill, we
here.
Poached Gravedigger. We poached him hard from Fox.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just walking through the studio up to where we were taping our stuff. And I go the normal way I'm always going, and I see this big security bouncer guard guy in the middle of the hallway. It's like, you got to go around. And I'm like, I don't even know what around means. Where do I go? And I I find my way all the way around this building. On the other end of the same hallway, another big security guard. And I go into the studio, and I'm like, what's going on out there? Like, why can't we go down our hallway? Somebody goes, Brady's having a production meeting in that conference room, so no one's allowed to even walk by the glass.
Oh, no. It's just like you can't make eye contact with me in the hallways.
Did I tell that story on with you guys in the past?
Wait, what was that?
I have a story about another Fox.
Let's hear it.
Who I was not in eye contact with. When I worked for IGN, the video game website, they were owned by Fox Interactive Media. And one day, Rupert Murdoch flew into Brisbane, California, and visited the office, and we were told you cannot make eye contact with Rupert Murdoch as he walks through the facility. He interrupted my game. I was playing, I think, WWF WrestleFest in the
the greatest arcade game ever
in the break room, and I had to stop and go back to my desk and work because I couldn't make eye contact with Roop. So,
you're a mere mortal.
A common thing,
right? He's like the Ark of the Covenant if you stare into his eyes.
Yes, and what you people don't know is that you lose a little bit of your life force every time someone looks at you in the eyes. So maybe that checks out.
That's true. That's what they said in the old. You weren't allowed to smile in photographs back in the day because your soul would be sucked out. All that stuff is real. All right, spinning back to the field. I think one thing that you people don't realize, because you think you realize it, because you're like, oh yeah, of course. Like I know this guy's been going high in fantasy drafts, and obviously he's got a ton of potential entering year 2. But like, what you don't really realize, and I'm kind of embarrassed for you that you don't realize it, that Bijan Robinson is about to tear the NFC apart. Mm-hmm. I really, really want to see this guy get a fair shake, because playing in an Arthur Smith offense and the backwards nature of the way that offense was run at times last year with bad QB play, and then a backfield that too often had Bijan on the sideline while Cordarrelle Patterson was getting carries, or Tyler Algier, who I like, but come on, he's not B.J. Robinson, or trick plays being drawn up for Jonnu Smith, for Christ's sake. Like, and it was just like, do we understand here that this is a generational talent at running back? I'm picturing, Bill, remember there was that shot, it might have even been from week 1, where they had the over-the-head wire shot of him doing a perfect 360 spin move on the way to the end zone. And it reminded me of only a few running backs that when they came into the league, you were just like, this guy's different. So much is different in Atlanta now, and so much of the oxygen around Atlanta got sucked up by the Michael Penix draft controversy. And so much has been overlooked of like how good a quarterback, I'm not saying great a quarterback, but how good a quarterback Kirk Cousins is. And he's healthy, and he's been taking all the snaps, and he's going to be back. In fact, I read in The Athletic, who was the reporter, I want to give him the pop that he deserves. It was reported that he threw a pick 6 in practice, right? And he decided to run down the defensive back, and he was clocked at 18 miles per hour on the running after the DB. And it was Josh Kendall, by the way, of The Athletic. And he was annoyed because he was clocked at 19 miles per hour pre-injury. So, yes, he is still working his way back. But the fact that he felt comfortable sprinting down the field in a damn practice, I thought that was a good sign, right? So you have this very proficient quarterback who knows how to run an offense. He's a veteran. You have the skill players, and I'm not here to buy in on the Kyle Pitts actually will be great thing, but he'll be better, right? And Drake London, he is going to benefit. The whole offense is going to benefit, but who's going to benefit most? It's going to be Bijan Robinson. But because in addition to those upgrades, Zach Robinson has now arrived. Bye-bye, Arthur Smith. Good luck to you, by the way, up where you're at these days in Western PA. Here in Atlanta, Zach Robinson loves leaning on a running back, and that's my guy, and he's my dude, and he's getting the rock. So I think that Bijan's going to get the touches that he needs. And by the way, with all the somewhat disappointment on some level, he still had 1,400 total yards last year, Bijan. I think Bijan, who, by the way, told Kay Adams in an interview this summer that he's been told by Robinson that he's going to be used like Christian McCaffrey. I do not put Christian McCaffrey-like production out of the picture with a player this special in this offense in that division. So 2,000 total yards and north of 13 total touchdowns in play, and you guys don't realize that this is me not realizing that I should have used my offensive player of the year prediction on Bijan. I did CD Lamb, so I'm doing a mulligan, baby. It's so you don't realize that I didn't even realize it. Okay, Bill.
Ultimate. I mostly agree. I mean, I clearly think something that you people don't realize is that I'm not really sure Arthur Smith's scheme was really all that modern. We saw teams on the, who are typically on the cutting edge. The Rams come to mind for me. They moved towards more gap-heavy schemes last year. We saw them get bigger offensive linemen and go with more of the gap stuff. And Arthur Smith's scheme is really his own scheme. He runs a little bit of power and stuff like that here and there, but a lot of it was, using Robinson as a decoy. He was using him on zone runs. And I think there's the opportunity to use him in more power runs, and that might get more out of him. I mean, he is one of those rare players where he can be explosive, in a scheme where you have to be a little slower as a running back. He has the acceleration. He has the burst. We all know that. And I think last year, heading into the season, we heard so much about how Bijan Robinson was not going to be just a traditional running back. He's going to be an athlete. We're going to line him up all around the field. The problem is running backs are not good at that stuff. The way you want to use a running back is as a running back. You don't want to use him as a slot receiver. And Bijan Robinson was terrible when he lined up in the slot. You don't want to use him as a split out player. That's a decoy. And teams knew it. And he rarely got the ball in those situations. You want to use him as a running back. Throw to him a ton. Use him in the McCaffrey role. But start with that in the backfield. And I believe Zach Robinson is going to do that. I don't think there is the same pressure on him and on Raheem Morris to use Bijan Robinson in some crazy role because it took him in the top 10. The guy who was at least partially responsible for that is now gone. So I think he is an incredible talent, and I have lots of reasons to believe the situation is going to be better for him in 2024 than it was in 2023. So I didn't realize it, but I do agree with it now that I heard the argument.
Yes. Mark, do you agree as well?
I think like it's almost like we're misremembering what he pulled off last year in an offense where it kind of like back in the day when you'd be playing fantasy and like Mike Shanahan would use like so many different running backs, like it was a clown car, and it was just a frustrating way to run your offense if you were trying to be a civilian playing fantasy. And like Arthur Smith was last year's equivalent of that, where it's like, why is any player I'm looking at being used the way they're being used for the most part? And I think there's going to be more common sense. But you also did go out and get a competent veteran quarterback who is capable of a lot of work through the air. So it is still a team where you look at the roster, it's like there are a lot of mouths to feed here. So let's just lean into Bijan as much as we can. I think that's a very sensible destination for him, Dan. I mean, he could do more than he did last year, but he also piled up a ton of yardage.
Yeah, beyond Cousins' physical abilities and as a quarterback, like his ability to read defenses, check into things that make more sense, give Bijan just opportunities that with all due respect to Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke, I don't know if that was happening either. So a lot to be bullish about there. Bill, give us another one. Let's go a little quicker around this time.
Okay, I'll make this one quicker. Everybody is focused on what's happening with the offensive contract situations that have now been resolved, by all accounts, in San Francisco. But what you people don't realize is that the defensive uncertainty is what people need to be paying attention to in San Francisco, because there are issues at every level with this defense, or question marks about every level, I should say, on this defense. Start with the injuries. Dre Greenlaw, coming off a torn Achilles in the Super Bowl, is going to start on the physically unable to perform list. Talanoa Hufanga, their excellent safety, tore his ACL last year. He's playing early in the year, but not sure he's going to be playing 100% of the snaps. This team could be not starting, but at least playing Tracy Walker, who just got cut by the Lions at the end of camp, for meaningful snaps in week 1. The secondary is a major question mark for this team. Logan Ryan and Tashawn Gibson were playing pretty much every down for them in the Super Bowl. Guys in their mid-30s, guys who don't typically play that late in their careers. They're gone. Isaac Yiadom, who was really kind of a replacement level cornerback, a waiver wire guy, before he had a really good year for the Saints last year, is going to be their cornerback. They signed Rock Ya-Sin, who struggled to kind of play for the Ravens last year. He got hurt early before the season and then didn't really get his job back on a regular basis. I mean, they're going with, not replacement level guys, but, guys who are signing one-year deals, who are veterans, who have had limited success in the past. And then up front, Chase Young, who they traded for, did not work out. He left in free agency. Arik Armstead got cut as a cap casualty. I mean, they signed Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos, two guys, again, okay edge players. I think Floyd's underrated. Had a good year for the Bills last year, although he did cost them a game where he was on the field as 12th man against the Broncos. They both suffered knee injuries in the preseason. They're not serious injuries or short-term injuries, but they're already banged up heading into the season. And they changed defensive coordinator. Steve Wilkes got fired. They tried to bring in Bill Belichick. That didn't work. This is a team where I have no doubt the offense is going to be good. I have serious concerns that this defense is a championship caliber defense. And I believe if they get off to a slow start, you people don't realize they're going to have to be in the trade market at the deadline, because they are all in to win a title with Brock Purdy this year before he gets prohibitively more expensive in 2025.
Yeah, and we just saw the Trent Williams deal, the Ayuk deal. We talked about this Gravedigger last week. The amount of pressure. We talked about this with Ravens at the top of this show, that sitting on this team's shoulders. So the fact that they have to kind of figure out this defense on the fly. As a Jet fan, I have to say that I kind of like when we're catching the Niners at a time of transition and when they have key offensive players that missed large chunks of the summer and are trying to kind of play catch up here. Famous last words, but that's where I'm at now. I know, Mark, you, for instance, took the Niners famously many years to win the Super Bowl and get over the hump. This year, I know you don't even have them winning the division, so I'm assuming that you might have realized on some level what Bill is saying here.
I think you really outlined that effectively, because I think one thing with the Niners is there's been so much drama during camp with these holdouts in these situations, and we're so focused on, what we saw from the offense in the preseason. It's like, now wait a minute, like the defense has kind of been pushed into the background, and there's a lot of transition. The only thing I'd say is that because, like a lot of good teams, they've been through a lot of coordinators. They've been thin at cornerback before in the past. They seem to find a way to – it doesn't seem to hamstring them, like, in terms of the regular season. Like, I struggled – I think there could be a little bit of a letdown, but I struggle to see them suddenly becoming, like, a complete porous operation. But when you're on your third or fourth coordinator – It at one point it doesn't work out. At one point, and it didn't really work out with Steve Wilks. You could tell that Shanahan and Steve Wilks were not on the same page for a big chunk of that. So it adds another hurdle for them. And it's a team right now with a lot going on at the moment. And at some point, have also played 3 or 4 more games than every other team year after year. When does it catch up? I mean, I don't think it's going to, but you're pointing out to real evidence of depth issues and personnel that they weren't in this place a couple years ago.
All right, Mark, what's your next one?
Every year there is a team that, whether it's a surprise or not, like they jump out to a record that people weren't expecting it. And I can think back to when I was a kid and I would, you didn't have the internet back then. You had like Sports Illustrated. And it would arrive on Thursday afternoon. But I was also the kid that would go to the library or used books places and collect old school Sports Illustrateds. And this one from before when I ever watched football, the 1979 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Check out this cover. This always stuck in my head. Tampa Bay, because this was a terrible football team for historically, from their formation. But Tampa Bay, unbeaten, untied, and unbelievable. They started 5-0, and it surprised everyone. I think this team that I'm going to point to is a little bit less of a surprise because we're expecting Jim Harbaugh to be a change agent for the Chargers in Los Angeles. But they were, when he went to the Niners, 6-10 the year before in a disaster. This Chargers team was a disaster a year ago, but he came in and he had that special sauce right away. And I can just see that whether it's an SI cover, that this team jumps out to a crazy record. Look at this schedule. I'm saying I think that they can go 9-0. If the Chiefs are going to have one loss, maybe it's this. They have the Raiders, the Panthers, the Steelers, then that Chiefs game, then Denver, the Cardinals, the Saints, the Browns, and the Titans. If this is the Chargers team that I think they can become under Jim Harbaugh, that is your first 9 games. And I feel like they could be that team that I have them as a playoff team. I don't think that's the craziest thing to think. It's kind of like they underachieved massively under Staley. And it was a very frustrating watch with Justin Herbert and everything. But if they can put it together, I feel like this is the team that jumps out to this insane record that catapults them into a higher seed than you'd expect. I think they could potentially win the division. I put them in the AFC title game, but part of it is because this schedule and because that's what Jim Harbaugh does. He comes in and changes everything, and I kind of feel like that vibe has played out with him so far. So I'm high on a huge record right out of the gate.
I love this. I don't want to say that I realized this because you people did not realize this, but I'm very optimistic about the Chargers. A classic example to me of a team that we're going to be sitting here a year from now as a public and saying, how did we not see this coming? Mark, you brought up the schedule, 3rd easiest, I believe, per ESPN's Football Power Index. A team that was better than their record last year, 3-8 in one-score games. They had a 7-win point differential for a 5-12 team. And Jim Harbaugh, this is his thing. People forget how bad that Niners team was. The fans were chanting, we want David Carr Alex Smith, who left after that year in free agency and said there's no way he could envision being back. Harbaugh brought him back. A year later, he was the belle of the ball. He was getting cheered and candlestick by the by fans in that crazy playoff game. Still my favorite game I've seen over the last 20 years against the Saints in the divisional round. That team had not had a winning season in 8 years, and they go 13-3, go to the NFC Championship Game his first year. Okay, maybe the Niners were an underrated team. He goes to Michigan, a place where they had one 10-win season in the prior 8 years. They had won 5 games the prior year, doubles their win total in his first season. This is a guy who gets more out of the talent you have than the prior coach. And I think if he turns them around in close games, I think if he gets more out of them, I think they're much better up front than they were after adding Joe Alt to the mix. I think this is a really good football team. And I think Mark is absolutely correct. I think they're going to go off to a very hot start. And by week six, people are going to be insisting that they were on the Chargers bandwagon all along when it was being driven by Mr. Sessler himself.
Good job, Sess Dog. I think we all had them in the playoffs in our predictions on Monday, but I didn't look at their schedule the way you looked at it, and it does set up well. And I'm not even going to do the thing that's like not based on any logic, just like, but they're the Chargers. They are the Chargers, and there's I think part of the reason, Bill, that there's not as much hype around them is because people are so sick of getting burned by saying the Chargers are going to be good, and then like it makes no sense to them when they're fighting for a playoff spot at 8-7 in December again, that you just assume that's going to happen. But I mean, everything's there. It's all there.
Yeah.
By the way, that Buccaneers SI cover, can you pull that up again, Gravedigger? Mm-hmm. This just brought back some bad memories for me. I grew up in Rockland County, outside of New York City, and I went to Pearl River High School, and our rival, everybody grows up and your high school has a rival. Our bitter rival was Nanuet, okay? The Nanuet Golden Knights.
Sure.
And we hated Nanuet, and Nanuet hated us. And every October we would play the Little Brown Jug game to decide who was superior. And occasionally there would be fistfights in the McDonald's parking lot on Route 59 between the Pirates of Pearl River and the Golden Knights of Nanuet. I bring this up because in 1989, the Nanuet football team won the state title, and they had this motto that you couldn't avoid it. Every restaurant, whether in Nanuet, they had a big photo of this goddamn Nanuet team, and it said unbeaten, untied, unscored upon. And stick it up your butt, Nanuet, because those days aren't coming back. It ain't ever happening again. So take down those signs. It's been over 40 years almost.
Anyway, that was a little personal. Realize Nanuet peaked 4 decades ago.
Exactly. It ain't 89 anymore, Golden Knights. All right, close it out, Bill Barnwell, with one more.
Oh, you don't have one you want to do, Dan? You want me to finish it up?
I had a second one. Nobody wants to hear me saying that that the Jets are going to be fine because Will McDonald has a great spin move and Hassan Reddick and go hang out with the Nanuet Golden Knights of 1989. but and I also wanted to talk a little Brady, which Mark hit. So I clear the floor for you, Bill.
Okay. Everyone is excited about the Texans and their upside with C.J. Stroud in year 2 and all of the moves they made this offseason. But what you people seem to have forgotten is that the Jacksonville Jaguars were a great football team until the moment Trevor Lawrence couldn't walk anymore. This was a team that went 14-4 between their bye week in 2022 and the week Trevor Lawrence got injured in 2023. They were 8-3 at that time. They were in position to be the top seed in the AFC. In that game, Lawrence got hurt. They lose to the Bengals. They never recovered. And I know we're hyped about the Texans, but I feel like this is a situation where the offseason has turned a good team into a great team. They were the 4th oldest roster on a snap-weighted basis in football last year. They were not a young team the way the Lions and the Packers are. They have young superstars, no question, but the guys around them are veterans on short-term deals. They jumped from the 3rd easiest schedule to the 4th toughest schedule. You people think the AFC South is the Texans for the taking. That is not true. I think the Jaguars should be the favorites in the AFC South.
Man, and that one's directly a shot across the bow of Heed the Call. Not so much with Gravedigger because he lives in a dreamland where the Titans are the favorites of the South. But Mark and I are both very high on the Texans this year. Mark, you were a big fan of the Texans during their rise last year. But I think it does get overlooked, that this team, even if they weren't a dominating outfit, they were in very good position for the playoffs before Lawrence's injury. The Brian Thomas of it all, how important is he, Bill, in terms of, like, is he a guy that has to hit the ground running for this offense to be proficient and win games?
He does, but I think it's more about the clarity of their receivers. I mean, Doug Peterson has this habit of sort of gathering the same kind of receiver and it creating a mess on offense. You think back to the Philadelphia days, there was that year they traded for Golden Tate, and they had four receivers, three of whom wanted to play in the slot. And so it just led to an offense where you did not have consistent roles for your receivers, and guys were being put in the wrong situations. Last year, that was the case. Calvin Ridley was playing as an X receiver. That's not his role. He should be playing in the slot. He should be playing inside, moving around. He's better as sort of that versatile player. Now this year, they have sort of defined roles for all their guys. You have Christian Kirk in the slot. You have Gabe Davis coming in for Zay Jones, classic Z receiver. He's going to create space for you by getting downfield and create stuff underneath him. He's going to hit big plays occasionally. And then you have Thomas has to be the X. And that is the most important role in a way. But, a guy who has the body type to do it, the physicality to do it, the speed to do it. If he's he's a good receiver from day one, this offense should not have many holes, because they also added Mitch Morse, I think a very underrated addition this offseason at center, fixing a spot that had been trouble for them in years past. So, I think Thomas doesn't have to be Justin Jefferson as a rookie, but if you people just realize that he can be a solid X receiver, I think they have all the other spots on the roster filled with players who fit those spots.
I think also, they played the Colts in week 1. That's one where I'm like, I think I'm high on the Texans. I have them as my Super Bowl team. That's feeling less and less original by the week. But it's like the Colts are the kind of team that could teach them a lesson right out of the gate. That this is not just going to be handed to you. And, not to go down the Titans avenue too deep, but I think that they're going to be a tougher team, better offensive line, and can that kind of a team steal a game from the Texans? Yes, that division, which was flying junk a couple years ago, and it's led by the Jaguars there as well. It's like there aren't a lot of tough outs or a lot of easy outs. So I think the Texans' record and the way they finished last season, it'll be a tougher test, but I do think you've got the quarterback, the coach, a really deep roster. They develop players. You've got the offensive coordinator. There's a lot of ingredients in 2024 that I like for them and how quickly they could grow and mature.
Big Lawrence here. Mm-hmm. He got paid, obviously, and he was touted as a generational quarterback. And I think maybe, again, when you talk about, like, why are the Jags not getting much love, this kind of feels like the first summer into the season where some people are backing off a little bit on, buying in on Lawrence as a generational type, top 10, top 5 QB. But he's still very young, Bill. And, if he's in an offense that, like you're saying, you think is better set up for success and he has better injury luck, I feel it, and I assume you do as well, that there's still a next level that he can unlock as a quarterback.
Yeah, we were sitting here last year, I'm assuming I'm not maybe on this show, but certainly on plenty of shows, the idea that Trevor Lawrence could be the MVP was hardly out of the realm of possibility. He was coming off of a second half that was every bit as hot as Jordan Love's second half was last year for the Packers. And it didn't work out. His receivers also dropped passes at the highest rate of any offense in football. The Chiefs were the highest wide receiver drop rate, but Jaguars across running back, wide receiver, and tight end. That could happen again. The offensive line could be banged up the way it was a year ago and not ever really coalesce, but I think the pieces around him are better, and I believe that we're going to see a healthier Trevor Lawrence. I think a more confident Trevor Lawrence with the receivers he has to work with. And I think you're going to see more big plays from this offense. So I'm more optimistic than most. Maybe Trevor Lawrence is not going to be a Hall of Famer the way that I think a lot of people thought he might be when he was, the top prospect for really 2 years before he entered the NFL. But I do think he is a guy who can be a top 10 quarterback. He was a top 10 quarterback in that 14-4 stretch, where he was great second half of 2022, and he was good, not great, but good first half of 2023. I think he can continue to take a step forward. He still has a lot, it's still very early in his career. I think that, he has more upside than I think it feels right now because of what we saw from him when he was banged up in the second half of last season.
All right. There you go. We hope everybody can take criticism because you got buried on this app.
We hope you people can take criticism.
And perhaps, yes, we'll look back at the end of the season and see if any of these takes actually worked out in our favor. And we will speak about them ceaselessly. And if we're wrong, it might be a little more quiet. And that's just how this operation unfurls. Bill, you've said it all. Where could people read you? What do you got coming up over on the Worldwide Leader?
On ESPN.com, I have my playoff bracket coming in this week. Went back through history and found that typically in a 14-team playoff, 6 teams drop out every year, 6 new teams every year. So who are those 6 teams going to be? I wrote about that for ESPN this week. Believe I'm on Around the Horn on Wednesday this week, so you can check that out. And then getting ready for the season to start. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I know I'll be writing over at ESPN, so check that out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bill. You lived up to the hype once more, and the next time you see and hear from us, it will be with Jordan Rodriguez and Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic, and we'll be previewing week 1. It's all happening. It's all happening. Until next time, you know what you must do. Heed the call.